Totally Football Show Europe. Today, Champions League semis. Big week for English hopes with Kane and Dyer, Jaden and Jude. Probably a referee too. We'll be talking about Madrid in Munich. Death warmed up as PSG and Dortmund go again. Plus Leverkusen, the team that will not die. How will they get on in the Eternal City? We'll be talking about all the other stuff from around the continent too. Plus, newly qualified for Europe, shy beach goer, handshake emoji. Will Brest get exposed on the continent? Listener, having a bit of a party here in the Totally Football Show studio with Julien Laurent.
Hey, champions.
Yeah, that cliffhanger finally resolved. PSG.
The suspense was too much.
Champions. Right. Also
Only
congratulations
3 games to spare, though.
Yeah, because now we are down to 18 clubs, so you play less matches, obviously.
True. James Horncastle is also here.
Hello.
Nice to see you, James.
For once,
Yeah. And on the line from Germany, Seb Stafford-Bloor. Hey, Seb.
Guten Morgen, Jimbo. How are you?
Very nice.
Is
Very
Seb's debut?
well. Yeah, your debut on the Totally Football
Wow.
Show. Europe,
Sure
but
is.
not on the Totally
Sure
Football
is.
Show. He's been in
No,
loads
but
of time.
on the Euro
Drop
edition,
knowledge. Yeah.
you need to sing.
Different
then.
vibe in the studio.
You've
have
got
to
an
sing.
Feel to being on the
an incredible internet connection, Seb. And also, you've got a really nice decor in your whatever front room type thing that is, and it's sunny there as well. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us, Seb. Seb's stepping in, listener. Let's start with some moments of the week. Seb, we pick out a moment of the week that we really enjoyed or felt was significant, and then we usually add about 3 or 4 others that are not so significant. Anyway, what was your moment of the week?
Well, I'm going to mark my debut by cheating at moment of the week and choosing a cluster of moments which have created a moment of next week. Is that allowed?
Yeah,
I'm not sure. That's not a good start.
yeah.
Okay, but hold fire because I think it's worth it. So this weekend in the Zweite Bundesliga, Holstein Kiel lost, Fortuna Düsseldorf lost, St. Pauli won, which creates a situation next Friday night where potentially St. Pauli can claim promotion to the Bundesliga by beating HSV, Hamburg, in their own stadium. Hamburg, of course, former European champion, heavyweight of German football, have spent every year of the last 6 kind of waiting to return to the top flight. They're sort of a fallen giant of the game. And, well, Hamburg is finally going to get a Bundesliga team, just not the one that's expected.
Right.
And it's probably going to happen in the derby. And I don't think any set of supporters deserves that.
Wow.
So I think that's worthy of moment of the week.
Definitely.
Next week.
Imagine losing the title to your biggest rivals in a derby.
Yeah. Well, you were there when Milan playing White Noise to drown out the Inter celebrations post their derby win on Monday.
Yeah.
Was that your moment of the week?
It was too loud for him. He can't pick that. It was too loud, he said. He complained.
And you mentioned Seb's Wi-Fi. I mean, the Wi-Fi at San Siro was dreadful.
Yeah.
As I mentioned. No, my moment of the week actually was going to be Inter's title celebrations, which happened yesterday.
Yes.
Which, remember this time last year when everyone was saying, okay, when Napoli win the league, it's going to be generational. It's going to be, they're going to be partying for every day for the rest of the year. And there were big celebrations, but Inter's celebration...
They had a cow. Napoli never had a cow.
Napoli had a cow, which was El Toro for their bull, Lautaro
the
Martinez. But someone led a bull that had been painted blue and black into Milan, which was quite special. And I think this was a number of celebrations wrapped into one. I think it was the fact that when they won the league under Conte, it was in COVID, so they couldn't celebrate it. I think it was perhaps... something that was to do with last year as well, where the team wanted to have, the fans wanted to have a celebration for winning the Champions League, which didn't happen, but they felt that they should have won the Champions League. And then obviously the way they've won the league this year, and they're not in the Champions League, so they can just have a massive big party.
True.
And I mean, the scenes are incredible, and the players were having a lot of fun. You had Çalhanoğlu holding up a banner of a banknote which had his face on it. And €0 because he was a free
nice.
transfer.
Denzel
You had
Dumfries.
Denzel Dumfries
was good.
Dumfries holding a dog on a leash with Theo Hernandez's face on it, and then telling the crowd not to sing bad things about Theo Hernandez after he'd done that. You had Simone Inzaghi on the bus. Everyone was handing out masks of Simone Inzaghi's face. Simone Inzaghi pulled one of those masks on his own face,
Wow.
which is quite Freudian. Just incredible to see Piazza del Duomo full again, as it was like a Monday night, fireworks going off all the time, It was one of the best title celebrations I've seen. I mean, James, we lived in Rome. People say, wow, have you seen Rome when Rome won in the league?
Yeah.
1 million people on the streets. I mean, this perhaps wasn't quite that, but it wasn't far off. I think there'd be about 500,000 people.
Good Lord.
Yeah.
Good Lord.
Amazing.
Alrighty. Jules, your moment of the week.
Well, because your intro was so good on Brest, your favorite club, and their game was just incredible. In the derby away at Rennes on Sunday afternoon when they won 5-4.
Incredible game.
2-0 down, then 4-2 up, then 4-4.
And then in the 94th minute?
Lilian Brassier.
I can't believe it. I'm sorry, I don't want in any way this show's level to be corrupted by.
No, but
when you have Brest winning but when you have Brazier scoring the key goal for Brest, it's almost like the universe wants you to ask big questions.
We'll be talking about them in Brest in the European Cups next year.
Very nice.
Yes, because they have qualified now.
In the groups.
In the groups,
a lot of anyone drawn against them will be wanting to finish on top of Brest. No?
No.
So Brassier, to win it with a header in the 96th minute. Incredible, really.
First time in Europe.
First time ever. The stadium, by the way, the Francis Leblay Stadium, which is an old school, quite a small stadium.
Right.
UEFA not happy at all with it. They say you can only have one stand open, 5,000 fans, a bit like what we saw with Antwerp in the Champions League this year. So Brest was like, no, this is not good. We're going to do our best to try to make it for all the security reason and health and safety, all of that. So they're working on it because they've known that whether it's Europa League, Conference League, Champions League, one of them they will be qualified for now. They're hoping that at least they can have a full stadium too.
Magnificent. Which competition do you think they're going to get into?
I think Lille will finish above them. So Monaco and PSG are Champions League, obviously, now. Third place will be between Lille and Brest to go direct to the Champions League. And then fourth place could be for Brest, but they will have to qualify, go through the qualifiers, etc. So I think they have really 50-50 Champions League or Europa League.
We'll talk more about them later on. But as I mentioned, Alvaro coming up later on. Here's a quick sneak preview of Mr. Romeo with his moment of the week.
Yeah, my moment of the weekend is going to be Almeria going down to the second division of Spanish football. I know that this is not the kind of bright moment that we are looking for normally, but the truth is that it's quite remarkable that they've gone down after 33 games only. It's been a disastrous campaign for them. They made a massive investment. It hasn't worked. They have had 4 managers this season, and it was about time that it happened, and it happened this weekend. So, hopefully they'll be back in Primera División very soon, but Almeria going down to the second division is my moment of the weekend. They lost 3-1 at home to Getafe, so goodbye to them for at least a year in Primera.
Yeah, rough times for Andalusian football because you've got Granada heading down as well with them, not yet mathematical. Cadiz also on their way out. Big gap between the bottom 3 and the rest, 6 points. Semi-final first legs on Tuesday. It's Bayern Munich against Real Madrid. Bayern who got past Arsenal in the quarterfinals, while Real Madrid had that penalty shootout with Manchester City. Wednesday, then, you've got that rematch from Group F as Dortmund host Paris Saint-Germain once again. And I think most people have Paris Saint-Germain down as favourites for this. Seb, I think, though, most people had Dortmund to be the kind of the weaker of the sides in the quarterfinals as well, but they still got through.
Yeah, a little bit of a mystery, Jimbo, because nothing about Dortmund this season has been hugely impressive, especially not outside the Champions League. And yet, there they were, playing kind of as they did 10 years ago. Certainly the atmosphere in the Westfalenstadion for the last game, for the return leg against Atletico Madrid, it was like something from the Klopp era. There was that energy, that bounce in the stadium, individual performances, but also that system football. I think one of the great losses for Dortmund since Klopp's departure, also probably since Tuchel left the club, is instead of being this mechanical system, a team that breaks you with its cohesiveness, they've become much more individual led, and they've only ever been as powerful as the individual players are able to field, be it Erling Haaland, Jadon Sancho, Jude, Bellingham. And in the current era, it's all a little bit meager on the star front. There are some good players, definitely, but nobody who probably as a neutral you'd be queuing up to watch. So yeah, these performances have really come out of nowhere, and in a way, I feel like that's been part of setting the stadium on fire, because people have missed that era and people have been kind of longing for it, and Dortmund have ridden that energy to somehow a Champions League semi-final, which I was actually at their game in Leipzig on Saturday, and they were dreadful. It showed them at their very worst. They were missing a couple of players. So Emre Can was suspended. Ian Maatsen, who's been on loan from Chelsea, but who's been really, really impressive as a kind of inverting left back. He wasn't playing, but they were everything they've been in the Bundesliga this year. They were porous. They were poor going forward. They have vast spaces through their midfield. It was with Paris Saint-Germain on the horizon, it was quite worrying. But then, into the Champions League they go, and their new personality tends to follow.
All right. And it should be a banging atmosphere for Paris Saint-Germain. How do you feel, Jules, about PSG's prospects?
I mean, they struggled when they went there in the group.
They got a draw.
Well, Jules.
I struggled on the goal show on TNT, and Warren Zaire-Emery, 17 that he was at the time, just saved it there and qualified PSG.
Is this the Barcola game?
No, that was the Newcastle game, wasn't it?
Was it?
At the Parc des Princes.
Okay.
But they did miss chances, PSG.
Yeah, they did
game.
as well.
Yeah.
They did as well. It was much better when they played Dortmund at the Parc des Princes in the opening game of that group of the Champions League 2, where they were much better. I think the thing I have about Dortmund is that they're so unpredictable, a bit like what Seb was just saying, because they cannot show up at all like they did at Leipzig, but they can also be very good, like we saw in that second leg against Dortmund, against Atletico for most of that game, not all of game, because I think even within one game they can be up and down massively. And I do think that PSG have to be the favourite, not huge favourite, but just a little bit favourite, because the second leg is in Paris, because they've got that momentum going. They haven't lost now. We said it for a long time, for a while in the league.
28 games now, is it?
Yeah, that's right. Obviously, they lost to Barcelona, but in the Champions League, but outside of the Champions League.
All right.
So yeah, they're looking good right now, but I think they're also quite worried about the threat that Dortmund can bring because of their unpredictability.
Will Ian Maatsen be back for this game, Seb?
Yeah, he will, Jimbo. He was only suspended on Saturday for the Bundesliga game, so he will play.
And Jadon Sancho scored a banger, the only goal in this 4-1 defeat that Dortmund had on Saturday against Leipzig. Are there signs that he's now beginning to properly find his feet again there?
I'd say he looks more comfortable. He seems liberated from, what we'll call the environment at Manchester United. And there's a freedom to his game in the sense that when he was in the Bundesliga the first time, there was a tremendous expression to his football. He's known, obviously, as a kind of a counter-attacking player, a goal scorer. He was recognised for his literal contribution. But I think at his best, the game came really easily to Sancho. Just he knew when to make the right decisions. His timing was very good. His ability to kind of flow into different spaces and capitalise on, particularly the movement of someone like Erling Haaland, was terrific. I think when he first came back to Germany, some of that inhibition that sort of developed during his time in the Premier League was still there. But there have been no expectations on Dortmund as a whole. And I think also he arrived into a context where everybody knew he was a reclamation project. People had kind of kept an eye on what happened to him at United and his relationship with Erik ten Hag. And it took a little bit of time. He hadn't played for a long time either, so there was a bit of a fitness and conditioning issue. But as the weeks have gone by, it's been really, really fun to watch him find himself again. And I'm a huge Jadon Sancho fan. I naturally, as a German dwelling person, I resent all the kind of the Farmers League stuff and how tedious that becomes. And so for him to go there and fail, having been held up as a poster boy of the Bundesliga, was very damaging. And so to see him come back and to show what a good footballer he is, what a smart player he is, and also what a future he still could have. I think one of our great issues is, as soon as something like this happens, as soon as a setback occurs within a career, you treat it as a full stop, as a sort of terminal, well, he's never been that good kind of situation. But yeah, he's been great. He was, Saturday, he was good within a terrible performance, so that kind of probably needs contextualizing, but he's certainly got a lot better.
Okay, speaking of reclamation projects, what about former Dortmund player Dembele returning to the Signal Iduna Park?
Yeah,
Jules?
Ashraf Hakimi as well.
Fair.
Dortmund,
How's Dembele looking now?
Really good. I think this is the best I've seen him since the best Dortmund years, which since the best Dortmund days. and they were a lot, but it was not all perfect. I think what happened away at Barcelona 2 weeks ago now, where the whole stadium was, the atmosphere for him was so toxic, and the way he responded. And the thing I love about Dembele is that he will miss the first dribble or the first touch, or he will roll over the ball like he did in Barcelona at a time where he gets booed and insulted. It just keeps going. And I like the fact that he's just never too impressed by even his own game, to the point that he said, like, you know what, I'm going to play safe because I've lost the ball 5 times in a row now.
Right.
No, the 6th time he goes again. And I think that's brilliant, and that's very much his personality and character. He feels very happy in Paris now, and he's been playing great. Maybe not so much on Saturday when he started, but overall he's been playing outstanding. And the thing is, when you play against him, you just don't know, because for half an hour you think, okay, I'm doing really well here. He's not doing anything, and then in a split second he's going to score a great goal or do something special.
Right. He's not the only player in PSG's ranks who can do that, although the other fella, or the one I was referencing, didn't start again at the weekend, brought on, but still only a 3-3 draw, and only just with Havre. But it doesn't matter, does it?
No, it's one of those games where Luis Enrique makes a lot of changes,
Right.
they don't play well, and then...
Game.
Sorry?
A league game.
Yeah. And then eventually they salvage either a point or they go and win it. Gonzalo Ramos, who's been really good in 2024, with the 3rd goal. Mbappe on the bench, coming on. Later on, looking a little bit frustrated because they wanted to win to wrap up the title and not wait for Lyon to play against Monaco on Sunday. Because the party was ready, there was just no party. But in the end, they kept that unbeaten run in the league to just one defeat, the one against Nice, all the way back to 8 months ago or something, or 6 months ago. So they won't care so much. They just wanted a bit of game time for Mbappe, for all the others, which they got, and even some got rested. So perfect.
James, you talked about PSG in the final. That's still your feeling, yeah?
It is, and I think it has to be on the basis of resource, investment in the respective squads, be a bit of a surprise. I mean, to Seb's point, it was not only a surprise that Dortmund are where they are, but it was a surprise that they actually topped that group. So, I think if PSG don't reach the final again for a second time, it's not necessarily a failure, because we've heard Nasser Al-Khelaifi say, look, this is a different squad from the ones that we built in the past. It's less bling-bling, blah, blah, blah. But I do think PSG should be the team that reaches the final. It would be a very Jules final. It would be Paris in London, which is Julien Laurent's.
Yes!
And so
It would be the second final in 4 years, and that's the 3rd semi-final in 5, by the way, for PSG.
Wow.
So there's a bit of... I know they still haven't won it, and they might not win it again.
Have they not?
But at least... But at least that consistency is good. There was a time where we didn't even reach the semi-final.
No, indeed. Looking forward to that on Wednesday. Meanwhile, before that, of course, on Tuesday, it's Real Madrid visiting Bayern Munich, the most played fixture in the history of the European Cup stroke Champions League. We'll talk about the latest iteration next. These two teams only have one defeat between them in the Champions League this season. That was, bizarrely, Bayern's loss to Lazio. Who'd have thought? But they bounced back from that nicely. This weekend, again, league form of secondary importance to them these days, but a nice 2-1 victory for Bayern over Eintracht Frankfurt with Harry Kane scoring in both halves. How's his record bid going?
Pretty good. I mean, he's still 6 goals shy of Robert Lewandowski, but he's broken a few new records. So over the weekend, he became the first player to score or assist against every Bundesliga team in his debut season. I'm not sure that's a real record. It sounds like one that somebody's made up. I don't know. I'm not sure of the credibility of that one. But he also scored, he became the first player to score against 16 of the 17 other Bundesliga teams. Again, I don't know.
It's still
Doesn't
pretty
feel
good,
like it has
doesn't
a place in the Guinness Book of Records, that one, does it?
Well, I mean, there's so many Kane entries in that august volume. But fantastic stuff, and a key figure, no doubt, as they host Real Madrid. One or two players who won't be there for Bayern. Looks like De Ligt and Leimer both out injured for this game. Jamal Musiala wasn't there on Saturday. Is he going to be back for Real?
Yeah, Musiala will play. I think the bigger picture, though, Jimbo, is that after the Arsenal game, I think a lot of people thought a bit of an uptick in the mood in Bavaria and, a bit of a bounce in the step of, Rafa Honigstein, for instance. But out of nowhere, here comes Ole Hoeneß, who Tuchel was kind of having a little bit of time off from all the sort of the media criticism, and he's obviously going in the summer anyway, so everybody can just sort of enjoy the prelude to the Real Madrid game. Uli Hoeneß was part of a kind of a round table for a newspaper in Frankfurt where he talked about, amongst other things, didn't think that Tuchel was particularly good at progressing or developing young players, and evolving players from the academy to the first team was obviously a big part of Bayern Munich, and not a hugely fair criticism of Tuchel because he's done an awful lot for Alexander Pavlovic's career. Pavlovic, I think, will be one of the great 6s or 8s of the next 10 years. He's a terrific footballer, potentially. Musiala's played some great football. Alphonso Davies perhaps has gone a little bit backwards, but that's a situation which predates Tuchel. Naturally, Tuchel was asked about this, and I'm not sure how precise the translation is, but said that his coaching honour had been wounded by Hoeneß's comments. And then, of course, you have to have the third level of the crisis, which is a Bild op-ed in which somebody said, well, what Hoeneß was really saying is not that, Tuchel's bad at developing young players. It's that Tuchel cries whenever he has a bad result and demands new players and more transfers and, harked back to the holding six debacle, which kind of dominated the first 3 months of the Bundesliga season. And so it's sort of from being kind of a little bit of a misplaced remark, it's turned into this very abstract conversation about what people mean when they say things on the record to Frankfurt newspapers. And it's a shame, really, because as you mentioned, Bayern Munich against Real Madrid is one of the great European fixtures. It's so exciting. And also, a little bit of a parallel to the Dortmund situation. Bayern have been very, very ordinary in Germany this season. Yes, Leverkusen have been terrific, but, Bayern have been poor and very unremarkable. And yet they came up with that sort of very uncharacteristic backs to the wall performance against Arsenal, where they really just sat and counterattacked and played ever so well in this great spirit, fantastic atmosphere in the Allianz Arena. And then, you spoiled it all by saying something like "I love you," but it kind of took a little bit of an edge off it, and you created a very sort of Bavarian melodrama, which is unfortunately typical Hoeneß.
Yeah.
And kind of going into it really with a kind of an awkward weekend in the past.
Very shortly, Real Madrid have a terrific record of late against Bayern Munich when they've faced each other. Manager on the way out at Bayern. Oh, by the way, Seb, are we any closer to knowing who's going to be taking over?
Well. Yeah, it seems very likely that Ralf Rangnick will be doing it.
Right.
And strange one again, because nothing in Bavaria can never be that straightforward. There was a little petition which sprung up overnight when the news that kind of Rangnick was the favourite to succeed Tuchel became public. And this petition's got, I think, about 15,000 names by now of people that sort of are actually, no, Tuchel's been the right guy all along. We don't want Rangnick. It's not quite right. So again, quite a strange one. There's no sense that the club are, in the supporters' eyes at least, moving in a new direction. But then I think a lot of supporters underestimate how extensive the changes at Bayern Munich will have to be. I mean, there's a big old refit in the first team, yes, but there's been an awful lot of change in the technical department over the last year.
Carlo Ancelotti will be returning there this time with Madrid. James, your prediction for this?
Well, I remember, was it Carlo had that seminal performance, Real Madrid against Bayern. Was it Pep's Bayern, the counter-attack game, where just completely tore them to shreds? I mean, this one, on paper, there are two sort of flawed sides. Seb mentioned the six that Bayern have been sort of missing. Madrid, the striker, which everyone has been talking about all year, even though Jude Bellingham has stepped up. I still think Madrid are closer to being the finished article.
Right. Okay. Alvaro, similarly positive. Let's hear his thoughts. I spoke to him a short time ago. So next up, let's get Alvaro Romeo on Real Madrid's chances on Tuesday and other Spanish news. Alvaro, welcome back. So, Tuesday night, Real Madrid taking on Bayern Munich, and they arrive at the Allianz Arena on an 18-game unbeaten run, the most recent of which was probably one of the more shaky results, the 1-0 win over Real Sociedad last Friday. But in general, Alvaro, how would you describe their form?
I think that Real Madrid is in perfect conditions to prepare a Champions League semi-final. They need 4 points in Spain to win the title. They are 13 points better off than second qualified Girona. Barcelona is third with a game in hand. They are the best team in La Liga. They have only lost one game this season in 90 minutes. That was in September. And, the game against Real Sociedad wasn't any more than a test for Real Madrid. But in this lovely cycle of Real Madrid, because it is a very good cycle for them, even a test game ends up with a victory for them. They won, by the way, with a goal from Arda Güler, who was backed up by Carlo Ancelotti at the end of the game, saying that he will continue at Real Madrid the next season. And, I think that this is the perfect moment for Real Madrid to meet Bayern, because there are only a maximum of 8 games left for Real Madrid this season. They could rotate heavily in 5 of them, in the 5 La Liga games, and they will win it sooner or later, that's for sure, and they can focus on the Champions League.
No Dani Carvajal for them for their trip to Munich because he's suspended. So who? Lucas Vázquez comes in?
Yeah, Lucas Vázquez is the most likely replacement, of course. Carvajal is one of the few injury concerns. One of the few concerns because he's suspended for the game. The only injury concern could be David Alaba, but Real Madrid hasn't recovered all their players, or pretty much all of them, on time for this part of the competition, because Eder Militao played against Real Sociedad and he showed a good level, and because even Thibaut Courtois is in the squad to travel to Germany, even though I really don't think that he will play.
Okay. It sounds like there's a lot of confidence in the Spanish capital about Real Madrid's prospects, but is there something that's worrying them or that you think Real Madrid should be worried about in this clash with Bayern Munich?
I think that Bayern has a competitive performance in them, no matter how they are in the Bundesliga, and Real Madrid should be very worried of that. It's true that Bayern has plenty of players in the sidelines or doubtful for this game, but Harry Kane still remains as the focal figure and the most important player, and I think that Harry Kane will probably give more trouble to Rudiger and whoever plays alongside him than Erling Haaland did with Manchester City. I think that Harry Kane at this moment in time is capable of imposing himself physically, and probably Rudiger hasn't found a challenge like Harry Kane throughout the season. And I believe that Bayern has a chance, but Real Madrid consider themselves favourites. I mean, I think that against Manchester City, they didn't think that they were the favourites, and that explains the way they had to play in the second half of the game at the Etihad. But against Bayern, they definitely consider themselves as favourites, with all their respect to Bayern, because I was checking the head-to-head, and Real Madrid has won 12 games against Bayern in history, and Bayern has beaten Real Madrid 11 times. But yes, the current moment of Real Madrid, this friendly climate in which Real Madrid it is now, knowing that possibly the cherry on top of the cake is going to be Mbappé coming in summer, I think that it makes Real Madrid favourite. And on top of that, as I said before, they have only lost one game this season. Wow. And, their competitive edge is very remarkable.
Indeed so. Girona in second place, still Barcelona third, and the big news from the Catalans is the fact that manager Xavi has now announced, as you predicted, Alvaro, that he will be staying on. What changed, and do you think things will be different for him next season?
I really don't think so. I think that it's the continuity of a project that doesn't have a lot of direction, really. Number one, Xavi was convinced to stay, was persuaded to stay, which is never a good sign, without the full support of the board, by the way. And the fact that Xavi stays, despite Barcelona being trophyless this season, tells you that maybe the club didn't have any plan beyond Xavi, or not an affordable plan beyond him, so they had to stick to him. But I find it very demoralizing that in a week in which the Champions League hopes and La Liga hopes were lost, Xavi was persuaded to stay. This is not the competitive, ruthless Barcelona that at some point tried to be the king of Europe and the king of Spain with a lot of success. This is a different Barcelona, a Barcelona with a big debt that probably cannot afford an elite manager right now, or they would prefer not to invest the money. And this is not the way good clubs operate. Normally, good clubs don't do this. If a season has been a failure or if a season hasn't been good, then things change. And I think the decision is rather undermining. And on top of that, I don't know what they have promised to Xavi, but Barcelona cannot make big statement signings in the market unless they sell many players. And I don't think that Barcelona could make this equation work. So, the future, in my opinion, doesn't look too bright for Barcelona, at least in relation to Real Madrid, unless the youngsters, who are probably the biggest glimpse of hope for Barcelona, sign the next season and become the players that we all expect them to become.
Okay. Behind Barcelona, the race for the fourth Champions League spot from La Liga has been a ding-dong affair all season, with Atletico Madrid and Athletic Club jockeying for position. It looks like things have taken a definitive turn in Atleti's favour. They met this weekend, a big 3-1 victory for Atletico over Athletic Club, and they are now 6 points clear, Alvaro, of the Basques.
Yeah, with 5 games remaining, which is probably the end of the Champions League fight, or the fight for the fourth spot, really. I think that Atletico de Madrid is going to get it, and they will qualify for the Champions League again. They haven't missed out, by the way, since 2012. And in very reductive terms, this is what Simeone gets paid for. I think that qualifying for Champions League is a must for Atletico. They have to get their accounts right, and they will get it again. I think that there are plenty of things that Atletico should be worried about, like, for example, their form away this season, the fact that they've got a really, really veteran squad and some key positions need renovation, and maybe Atletico doesn't have as much money as they would wanted. But the game was good, and it was a dangerous one for Atletico, because Athletic Club Bilbao had beaten them 3 times this season, but Atletico was overall better, more prolific, and their win was deserved. The only sad note, and it's a very big sad note, again, was the fact that Nico Williams got monkey chants from the stands in the first half. Luckily, the police has identified the man. This is news on Sunday. And, the usual protocol will be triggered, activated. La Liga will sue this man to a prosecutor in Madrid, and Atletico will put the membership of this very unpolite and uneducated man in suspension, and they will ban this man if he's proven guilty. But, this is not the first time that this is happening in La Liga. We have spoken deeply about all these subjects, and the fact that Nico Williams, a Spanish international who plays in Madrid very often with the Spanish national side, has to endure something like this in Madrid is not acceptable.
Indeed not. Alvaro, thank you so much for that. We look forward to speaking to you next week.
Yeah, I'll be happy to be there. Thank you, Jimbo.
Lovely stuff there from Alvaro Romeo. Next up, it's on to Thursday's competitions, Europa and Europa Conference Leagues. Woo! All right, Thursday in semi-final land, there's Roma Leverkusen in the Europa League, and also Marseille Atalanta in the Conference League. Hey, Aston Villa host Olympiacos, while Fiorentina face Club Bruges. Hey, Seb, before you leave us today, let's talk the incredible Bayer Leverkusen. First of all, a rematch of last year's semi-final, which went Roma's way in particularly enthralling fashion. 1-0 and 0-0, was it not? Yeah. 2 legs?
Yeah, Bove.
Yep.
Yeah.
Very nice. Bayer Leverkusen warming up for this week's game with another classic Leverkusen performance. Tell us, Seb.
Almost become a cliche now, Jimbo. Went 2-0 down against a really bright and energetic Stuttgart, who are their own story. In any other Bundesliga year, they'd probably be the tale of the year. And then back they come, as they always do. And it's interesting, I had a conversation with Jeremy Frimpong after they won the title, where he talked about this habit they have of scoring late goals. And he said there's no urgency, there's no panic, there's nobody on the field in that Leverkusen side who starts screaming and starts trying to kind of direct and orchestrate how they play and where they find their goal. He just said, we've done it so often, and our football has so often created chances and opportunities that we rely on it, we depend on it, and we know if we keep playing, if we keep calm, eventually there will be a chance. And against Stuttgart, again, there's Robert Andrich, who prior to joining Leverkusen, he a bit of a destroyer of a midfielder, not really known for his goal scoring. And yet there is, again, really nice finish, 2-2, winning, unbeaten streak intact. And on they go. And actually, there's a little bit of symmetry to this Roma game, because if you remember last year in the second leg, I would say it's probably fair to describe Leverkusen as probably having been the better team in that game and having the better chances. But they're emotionally destructed. And a lot of what they did last summer was about rebuilding the dressing room chemistry and making sure that they had the right maturity in the right positions and the right characters and personalities in the side to avoid that happening. So instead of just having talent and depending upon that for their chance creation, in comes Xhaka, in comes Grimaldo, Jonas Hoffmann is there as well. And I think even though the plans predated that Roma game, where they are now has really been instructed by it, because they've the maturity that they show in being able to navigate difficult situations and find themselves behind, or I think of even in the Europa League, that game against Karabag when that was well, yeah, absolutely. And time again they've been able to keep calm, and it's the absolute antithesis of what undid them last year in Europe. And so it's very, very interesting to see what happens this time around.
Brilliant. Okay, it's now 46 games that they are unbeaten this season. They've scored 16 goals in stoppage time in all competitions this season. Just amazing. There's later on in the 96th minute, as you mentioned, from Robert Andrich to make it 2-2. They've got 3 fixtures left to complete the first ever unbeaten Bundesliga campaign. That's Frankfurt away, Bochum away, and Augsburg at home. But before any of that, they've got the trip to Rome. Could this be where it all comes undone? James, how are Roma looking?
Tired. They look tired because they had to play this rescheduled game last Thursday, which was only 20 minutes, but it still meant they had to prepare for it, that they had to go to Udine in order to do it, all the way on the Slovenian border, and they only won that game late. And again, to Seb's point about Leverkusen, you never know when they're beaten. They always come back.
You say it was late. It was actually in the opening 20 minutes of the game.
Yeah, but it will statistically go down as the 89th minute. Roma, 8 of their last 11 goals have come in the final 15 minutes. I think they've scored 6 after the 90 as well. They are always a threat from set plays. Yeah, that has endured from Mourinho to De Rossi. They will have some players back going into this Thursday game, one of whom will be Lukaku. But it was encouraging to see Tammy Abraham score his first goal in a year at the weekend. Big goal, equaliser as well. They'll have Paredes back, who's late
as well.
Yeah, 88th minute. So this was in the Derby del Sole against Napoli.
Yeah, and they'll have Paredes back. Paredes has probably been the player who's been regenerated the most under De Rossi. Over the last 18 months of him being back in Italy, Paredes.
Him and Miles Sfila, maybe as well?
Sfila has been magnificent. Perhaps the best goalkeeper in Serie A since De Rossi made the overdue decision to drop Rui Patricio and play Sfila. He was obviously the penalty shootout hero against Feyenoord. Keeps coming up with big saves, covers up for some of the shortcomings in De Rossi's management and the tiredness in the team. So they'll need him to have a big night.
But sorry, you were talking about Paredes.
Yeah, Paredes, who De Rossi played with in his first spell at Roma. Yeah, De Rossi understands a player in his role in a way that I don't think Mourinho really did. And Paredes just gives them that assurance in midfield on the ball, gives them a possession game. They don't have a lot of passes in this midfield. There are a lot of kind of physical guys, as you'd expect when you inherit a Mourinho team. And they missed him through suspension at the weekend. Smalling will be back as well. Smalling played both legs against Milan, and it's almost like they bring him out of the cryogenics chamber just for these European nights, and so I expect he might play as well. So, but De Rossi has passed a lot of big tests since he got the job in mid-January, and this is right up there with the biggest of them, because I think, as Seb alluded to, Leverkusen, it's obvious, have kicked on a lot from the team that Roma knocked out in the semi-finals last year. Roma, the feeling was they were going backwards. That's why they changed the manager, and they have perked up a lot under De Rossi. But whether it's enough to have a repeat of last year and get to another final, their third European final in 3 years, which would be extraordinary, is part of what makes Thursday night such a great watch.
You couldn't ask for a tougher opponent in Europa League terms than Bayer Leverkusen. The other semi-final will see Marseille in the first leg hosting Atalanta. Marseille, who had a late win themselves against Lens at the weekend. Atalanta, 2-0 winners, was it this weekend?
Yeah. Against Davide Nicola's Empoli.
Yeah, indeed. How's this one look? Marseille, that's what, their first win in how many?
6, I think.
6.
They looked better yesterday, to be fair. They had more energy.
Joe
Biden said they would play his strongest team.
Right.
Instead of rotating like Gasperini did, for example, or like others did before a European game, a big European semi-final. Because of the situation Marseille were in, not winning, not playing well, Joe Biden said, I'm going to play the strongest team, the team that will very likely start on Thursday.
It's not literally Joe Biden listener. No. It's Jean-Louis Gasset.
Jean-Louis Gasset, sorry, but he's the same age as Joe Biden. There was a good thing. The good thing for Marseille was that Lens play a similar system to Atalanta and similar way as well. So Gasset was like, it was good for us to play against Lens tonight at the Velodrome. They won. Pape Gay scored really late. Aubameyang scored very early as well, because they scored in the first minute and in the 88th or 87th minute to win in a tough game. With a lot of intensity in it. So that's a good rehearsal, I guess, although he said we will play differently against Atalanta, so I expect more of a deeper block and low block and trying to play on the counter a bit more than they did yesterday, where they really had to go for it and try to get control of the game.
Right, Atalanta will be facing that Velodrome atmosphere, are the team who conquered Anfield, of course, and we were all incredibly impressed back then when that happened. Now we're thinking, I mean, everyone beats Liverpool these days. But maybe
or at least don't lose against Liverpool. Yeah.
I suppose, but then again, Atalanta over the last few years have beaten Ajax in Amsterdam. They've gone to lots of places and won, and so I think they'll be quite battle hardened going into this game. And they've just reached the Coppa Italia final as well for a third time under Gasperini, which is remarkable. So, I think there was some concern that they were showing tiredness, but they do have an ability to rotate.
Right.
And I think they've Jules mentioned how Gasp changed things up at the weekend. Lookman scored, and yet more recently Gasp has been going for his first choice starting 11 has been De Ketelaere and Scamacca, who scored some ridiculous goals of late. So I mean I think they're in a really good place right now.
They will be slightly favourite against Marseille because the second leg is in Bergamo as well, and because they are better. They are a better team than Marseille. It would be down a lot to intensity and the most aggressive. And Marseille would play like that because I think this is how they can just win this tie and qualify for the final.
Okay, side that Atalanta beat to reach the Coppa Italia final. Meanwhile, Fiorentina are in the Conference League semi-finals. They're hosting Club Brugge, while Aston Villa get a visit from Olympiacos. Brilliant. Seb, thank you so much for being with us today, all the way from Germany. And
thanks very much for having me, guys.
It's been great. And I hope we can hear more from you in the weeks to come. Next up for us, we're going to touch on one or two of the other matters resulting from this weekend around Europe.
Thanks,
Lovely
Seb.
stuff. Thanks, Seb. Very good. Well, you told us all about Brest's incredible 5-4 thriller with Rennes. All their games recently have been a bit like that. They had a 4-3 win, then a 4-3 loss, and then a 2-0 win, and there's 5-4. Oh,
A lot of bounce.
A great team.
Oh dear. Lyon Monaco.
Wow, what a game. Wissam Ben Yedder touched the ball 3 times in the Lyon box, scored
Yep.
2 goals.
Wow.
One after 22 seconds to open the scoring, one later after an hour. And that when you thought that Monaco, who came back from 2-1 down after being 1-0 up, and Lacazette and Saïd Benrahma, who is doing really well since joining Lyon from West Ham, scored to make it 2-1 for Lyon. And Ben Yedder made it 2-2. It looked like Monaco were going to win. And maybe their mistake in this game, in a way, was to try to go for the win where they could have seen the game out and got a good point away at Lyon. Lyon being the best team in 2024 in Ligue 1. We said that. They got 1 point more than PSG. Outstanding work, really, from Stonewise and all those players. But instead, Monaco kept attacking. And guess what? Lacazette, who was outstanding in the game, really amazing, with an amazing assist a la Harry Kane. For young Malik Fofana, who joined in January from Ghent, the Belgian wonder kid, who finished it well to make it 3-2 for Lyon. And that win get them a little bit closer to maybe a Conference League spot, or maybe even if they're lucky, and without the French Cup final that they will play against PSG, maybe even potentially a Europa League spot.
Wow. So they moved up to 8th. That means they're level on points with Marseille in 7th. What would they need? What place would they need to get into Europe?
So 7th is in Europe if PSG win the French Cup against Lyon.
Right.
If Lyon win the French Cup, they will go to the Europa League, of course. So
Right.
only 6th then will qualify you for Europe.
Okay, but 6th is only 2 points above
Yeah.
them. Beyond that, for next season, you mentioned they're picking up points at a faster rate this calendar year than PSG. Could they be jostling for top spot next season?
Yeah, we'll have to see. I think Pierre Sage, as we said, has been doing an amazing job and rebuilding what was left from the previous managers, which was not much. Incredible job, really, from him.
Right. Is there money behind them?
There was a bit of money because they were the highest spenders in January, all in the whole of Europe.
Really?
We said that, yeah. They bought Fofana, Benrahma, Gift Orban, all those players that, for some of them, have had a really good impact on. Mangala and Orban not so much, but Fofana and especially Benrahma very much so. Matic as well. All of that, I think has helped them massively. That's why they're there. And I don't know if over the whole season they could do it because Lacazette is old, because Matic is getting older too, all of that. But for the last 4 months, they've been outstanding, really outstanding. And there was 1 or 2 games where they just didn't show up. But then when they're on form like yesterday, the intensity is great. The patterns of play, the ball movement going forward especially is really, really good. So I think Pierre Sage will get better with more time. And I don't know if they can win the title next season, but if they made the right recruitment in the summer, and what do you do with Cherki, for example, who's been a bit of a super sub lately. So there's a few question marks still, but I think they can have a go for sure, a top 3 finish.
Very exciting, very exciting. Okay, just to finish off then today, some Serie A news. We talked about Inter winning the title, the 2-0 victory over Torino. Also this weekend, Juve-Milan at the Allianz Stadium. Just a 0-0 draw here, James.
Not great.
Not great.
Watch it. Not great.
Yeah, I think it's a case of the X, isn't it? Both these coaches know that they're on their way out or feel that way. And yeah, that was the prevailing story going into it, particularly for Stefano Pioli. He's had a rough 10 days after going out of Europe and then losing the derby and watching Inter win the league in the derby that you're hosting. And then, to pick up Gazzetta dello Sport and see Lopetegui.
Julien Lopetegui.
Yeah, and I mean, it does feel, the process does feel a bit Spurs 2021 in that there's been a social media protest against Lopetegui, the hashtag #NoPetegui.
Really?
#NoPetegui.
What number on their list do you think he was then?
Definitely high up.
Yeah.
Definitely been spoken to. Definitely had the backing of some key people within the club as well. Don't think it was by any means a sort of done deal. But yeah, certainly I think there was confidence that he would be, let's say, to use transfer parlance, a leading candidate.
Right. Okay. Juve's managerial future, what does that look? Thiago Motta shaped or?
Yeah, very Thiago Motta shaped.
Okay. What about in Naples, James?
Yeah, Naples. I mean, Pioli could land there if he's shown the back door at AC Milan. Antonio Conte. Conte has been the figure of so much debate in Italy over the last weekend because it's obviously become apparent that there are 3 big jobs that are going to be available: Milan, Juve, Napoli, and he doesn't seem to figure in Juventus' thoughts. He at Milan, if you think of how they're run, the idea of paying for an A-list coach who wants to be heard.
Who
on
comes with
transfer
a substantial
strategy,
rider as well.
and who also likes to basically, he will tell the press, not just you, when you're doing a bad job managing the club and when you're not buying him the players that he wants and that sort of thing. And that's something that I don't think they like. Napoli's quite interesting because I think he's a guy from the south. I think maybe the Napoli job has lost a little bit of romance because a lot of coaches have always wanted to be the guy who wins it for the first time in 33 years, which is what Spalletti did. De Laurentiis, even though he did spend 75 million on Osimhen, is not someone who likes to spend a lot of money, which I think, for Conte would say, I don't like to spend a lot of money either. I just want players who are functional to my style of play. But I think that's perhaps an issue. So the Napoli job, there's this kind of rotating cast between Vincenzo Italiano, the Fiorentina coach, who's got them to a Coppa Italia final last year, Conference League final last year, might get them into a Conference League final again this year. There's Gasperini as well, who I think some clubs are thinking, do we have one last attempt to try and get this guy out of Atalanta and see if he can do what he's done there here. And then there's Pioli. I would say Pioli, Gasp, and Italiano are all guys who earn salaries which are within Napoli's ballpark, whereas Conte is not. But I think Conte is probably going to have to reflect and say, maybe, going to have to maybe work for a little bit less than he has done in the past if he is to get back into Serie A. But there's still, for his reputation over here, there's still in Italy a feeling that he is, one of the leading Italian coaches of his generation. So, also a lot of intrigue is to see whether he's learnt over the last year of being out of the game, whether he's been studying and wants to change how he works or how he sets his teams up.
With all the jobs available in the summer, if Mourinho and Conte and maybe even Allegri still find themselves with no job.
So Tuchel as well.
Yeah.
But Tuchel is a bit younger, at least. But maybe the trend is changing, that you don't go to those managers anymore so much. That maybe you look slightly outside of the box. Milan have done that before when they wanted Rangnick too, with Lopetegui. But even if you're a club like Napoli or if you're Juventus, you just think you look for something different. And even all the others, from Bayern to Barcelona to Liverpool, there's guys that are incredible pedigree and CVs, but maybe not so much for the football of now.
Yeah, when you see your Mottas and your Alonsos doing their thing.
Arne Slot, even, all the guys.
De Rossi's,
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll park it there for today. Looking forward to not just midweek, but also some big games coming up at the weekend. Next week on Monday, Totally Football Show Europe will return with Matt Davis-Adams in the hot seat because I'm off. I'm off
bodybuilding.
Sorting out. I'm off bodybuilding.
Yeah.
That's right.
Nice.
Yeah. Doesn't happen by accident. This physique.
Getting shredded.
Yeah. Quite possibly so.
Ripped.
Yeah.
Quite possibly
Ripped.
so. Anyway, thank you so much, Jules.
Thank
for
you,
being
Jimbo.
here today, and James as well, Rachel, and guest producer Ben. Feels like old times in the booth. Seb Stafford-Bloor on the line from Germany, and Alvaro Romeo, Seb Stafford-Bloor from Germany. And hey, you listener. We'll catch up with you soon. Have a great time in the meanwhile. From all of us here, it's goodbye. The Totally Football Show podcast is available 3 times a week, bringing you all the football news you could reasonably be expected to care about. We've got views, we've got stats, we've got analysis, we've got some of the best football writers around, and the whole thing is absolutely free. So have a listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or all the usual places by clicking on the link below.